So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Friday, October 15th, 2021, and our calling number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And as I always say, we'd love to hear your comments and questions because it makes it your show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Delighted you're here, and I'm certainly in full alignment with what you were saying, Tim, about that Catherine brought forward of all of the above. You know, every intervention, the smallest one, might be the one that takes things over the edge into healing, and we never know which they are. You know, we do an intensive, we do full, fresh and raw dietary regimen. No drugs whatsoever, not even sugar, not caffeine, not, you know, and each of those pieces of the puzzle, each intervention, knowing who one is, having acceptance in a family system, being willing to look at the family system dynamics and bring healing to them, just all of the above. And certainly there are a lot of young people out there that need someone like you, Grandma, or Orb, to hold the space for them. So I acknowledge your willingness and your persistence and what you've done for this young man. And I certainly understand it's a challenge. And the most important thing I think you can do is hold the space for him and hold him accountable. And the factors you can introduce are the ones that you can introduce, and perhaps there's some professional help out there, as we talked about yesterday, someone who's been there, done that, and is on the side of the addict wanting to assist them in recognizing they have a problem, and, of course, someone who can speak the lingo of a college kid today, and college campuses oftentimes are, I think, universities for different types of abusive substances and abuse of self and each other, and lots of crazy stuff going on in our culture. And fortunately, there's more and more human stuff going on in our culture. More and more people are revisiting their humanity. And, I actually put a post on Facebook this morning, and, the whole focus of naturopathy is what's natural to the system. And if you go with nature, you got to win every time. But my post this morning is, why are we turning so many things over to the sorcerer's apprentice? And the sorcerer's apprentice to me is a symbol of somebody who doesn't have a clue, but they have an idea, and gee, well, let's try this, well, let's try that, let's try this, let's try that, and none of it's in alignment with the natural flow of as many years, if you're on one side of the fence theologically that we've been on this planet for 6,000 years, or if you have the comprehension that when they said a day for the Creator is like 1,000 years, maybe it's 10 billion years, and it really doesn't matter. There's an identifiable flow of the way the energy system works, and when you fall in harmony with and align with that flow, things are going to come into harmony. So. And we're certainly here to hold the space for you and offer all the support that we can for you and for this young man. And as you were talking about, whether he might try to have some microdose and some drugs delivered to your home, I think she set a standard that's just absolute, and it's not one you have any choice about. Your husband's a lawyer, and something like that gets delivered to your home, there could be great difficulty for him, and so you don't have to become personally involved in your setting rules for him or anything else. Just illegal substances don't come to this home. If they do, they're immediately turned over to police, because Tim has a law license, and we need to protect that. So that's just part of the standard of being here. Are you still with us, young lady?
No, she's not.
Okay. Well, no, we're holding the space. And I'm going to jump right in then and pick up on the reading from yesterday. We're in the section on inherited patterns, page 133, if you're following along with us. And we've been talking to Richard about the fact that each person at each moment of their lives has a construct in their minds that they call the world. They think they're looking at the world, but it's really nothing more than a construct in their minds made up of an interaction between the energetic patterns of what's happening in the world and what those patterns elicit from our memories, from our genes, from our power person dynamics, from our cultural dynamics. And so realities come forward, and realities are the things that guide behaviors. So if you can assist one who's having difficulty in behaving in a way that supports their life force expressing as human, then you can assist one in changing the dynamics of the perceptual guidance that tells the person how to behave. Each individual, this is one of the complexities of forming a society, a civilization, or a government for that matter, of all of the competing dynamics and interests, and then you take all of those competing dynamics and interests and add to it, everybody's got a different picture in their mind for every event that happens. And I admire, a lot of times I think, government goes off the rails, self-interest comes in. I think there's actually a simple solution for that one. I'm for eradicating prisons, but there's one place where I think prisons really do fit, and that is if anybody, the temptation, the amount of money that flows through the hands of politicians, we can't even fathom how much that is. And therefore the temptation is so enormous. Every special interest has a way of saying, well, I'll give you a little something if you give me a boost. And I think a simple resolution for that would be, if you get caught compromised for even a nickel, if you're involved in government, then no holds barred, no questions. You just go to prison for life. That's all. Not as punishment. Doesn't need to be a punitive prison type of thing, but you're isolated from the culture, because you're not safe in the culture with what you do. And I think that would be a simple solution. And then I don't envy one who takes on that job, because, as I say, all the competing desires and goals and aims and purposes that people have, and then even people who have the same desires, goals, and aims have different perceptual constructs. And if their power person was compromise the way they treated the child grows up to be an adult that's willing to compromise the way they treat others. There's so much complexity, and that's one of the reasons why we talk about in our codependence to interdependence workshop the pseudo solutions of the non-being mind. The mind will always make up, every sorcerer's apprentice. Everyone who does not have tools or know, their minds will make up a solution they think will work. And they're the pseudo-solutions. And the number one pseudo-solution, just give an ear for it in every arena where there are problems. What's everybody trying to do? Everybody's trying to figure it out. Well, here's the truth, folks. You can't figure it out. You're not smart enough. You will never be smart enough. There is no figuring it out. What's the dynamic of a child or an adult or a business person or an abuser or a victim? Or what are the dynamics inside of that mind with their genes, with their environmental experiences, with their upbringing, with their interactions, every interaction in their life with every person? Nobody can figure that out. But here's what I do know. In every circumstance where there is hostility or fear beneath a perceptual construct in a mind, every time, there's a lie, an errant energy at the root of that person's perceptual construct. Now, you may never figure out what that lie is, and you don't need to, because you can't figure it out. But here's what you can do. You can collapse it. because you know what drives it. And when you collapse it, here's the beauty of what happens. The structure of that perception, it may be so refined and so sophisticated. And everybody wants to be sophisticated. Do you know the root of the word or the idea of sophistry was a group of Greek philosophers who went around Greece training the children of the wealthy how to lie and make their lives appear true. That's sophistry. But people want to be sophists. They want to be sophisticated. But it doesn't matter who it is or what the circumstance is, what the problem is, what the trauma is. At the root of every circumstance where there's a conflict, there are minds with perceptions based in hostility and fear. So where you can't figure it out, you can, at any time you choose, forgive it. Remember that forgiveness doesn't mean I'm going to let somebody off the hook because my mind is in this errant posture and I'm in pain and turmoil or trauma. That's not what forgiveness is. The Greeks really twisted that one upside down, inside out. Sophistry at its finest, because it's entrapped virtually the whole world. Oh, I'll forgive you for what's going on inside of me. That's about one of the most sophistry-based ideas that exists in the world. A lie appearing to be true. I just forgive them. Well, forget it. Please, don't ever forgive anyone ever again for anything. If you say, that's right, I have to forgive myself. No, please, don't ever forgive yourself for anything. And people look at me kind of cockeyed and say, Michael, what are you talking about? I thought your work was about forgiveness. Yes, that is absolutely what it's about. But if you think that you can forgive yourself or somebody else, you don't have a clue what forgiveness means. The Greeks took an idea. The idea was pardoning, letting somebody off the hook for what was happening. And they called that forgiveness. Vladimir Lenin, responsible for more deaths on planet Earth than any human being that has ever lived, I suspect. He says, the way you destroy a culture has changed the meaning of its words. The minute you were convinced that forgiveness means I have to forgive you or myself, the definition of the word was changed and forgiveness was disappeared from possibility for you. So we want to restore its possibility. Yes, this is all about forgiveness, but it's got nothing to do with you letting yourself or somebody else off the hook for some perceived offense. Forgiveness is the tool with which recognizing your perception, if it is, has hostility or fear integrated into it and therefore is a lie. And we now know, based on Yeshua's first century Aramaic teachings about forgiveness, how to collapse those perceptions. And that is forgiveness. How does it work? Well, it's pretty simple and straightforward. You got a reality in your mind? At the root of the reality, some form of hostility or fear. So we now know that your mind is using corrupt data to produce your perceptual construct. The thing that drives that whole process is your goals. You'll notice you're never upset with people. Never for a minute. I mean, unless you're just a generally miserable person, you're never upset with people as long as they're fulfilling all the goals you have for them. You're quite delighted with them. You'll notice you go into upset, you go into hostility or fear when you or someone else does not fulfill the goals you hold for them. When we load a goal in the mind, that goal is the driver for the perceptual construct that's going to be in my mind in the next instant. If that perceptual construct holds some form of hostility or fear, it's because the driver that I loaded activated or resonated the hostility or fear into activity. But the hostility and fear itself stays underneath. And all we get to see is the little tip of the iceberg. And we have no idea in that circumstance what's going on underneath the surface. But we're sure that somebody else is at fault, and maybe we should forgive them. Forget forgiving anybody ever again. If your mind ever tells you to do that, tell your mind to shut up. Or, if maybe this person did something that's really off the mark, and it's appropriate to let them off the hook for it, then please let them off the hook. Pardon them. Call it what it is, and then go do your forgiveness work. And your forgiveness work will consist of what do you have to do to collapse that pained perception in you. And guess what? Having children is like having your unconscious mind hanging out in true living color and Dolby sound. Everything you've never dealt with, they're going to bring up for you. And then if that doesn't work out, your grandchildren will come along and do the same. And so what is the goal that's driving the perception for me at this moment that causes me to build a picture in my mind that somebody else is the cause of the frustration, the fear, the rage, the hopelessness, the helplessness that I'm feeling at the root of this situation? Once I establish precise goal that I loaded in my mind in this situation that holds this pained perception for me, then I shebag. In Aramaic, the word forgive, the word that's been translated as forgive, is the word shebag, and it means to cancel. I cancel that goal. But Michael, why would I cancel such a wonderful goal for my grandson to be happy and healthy and productive in his world, creating his music? Why would I cancel that goal? Because if I load that goal in my mind and it resonates some form of hopeless, helpless, fault, failure, guilt, sadness, rage, fear, lack of control, whatever it is, then I'll get to look at the next level of my internal dynamics. I'll get to bring to the altar conscious mind, AL, that 9-bit space up there, that's the altar, ALTER. Not altar like in worship, but the place where you alter the hidden content of your mind. But you have to get it to the altar to alter it. But if the altar is filled with, oh, look at how there's a problem in my life, if I don't clear the altar, well, how do I do that? I cancel the goal that's driving the perception that holds the pain. When I cancel the goal, the perception collapses in on itself and simultaneously clears the altar. And now, looking deeply within, I have access to what's hidden under the surface in my own mind. When I bring that forward in the presence of active love, anything that is in error about that content will begin its dissolution. So in this particular chapter, working with Richard, we're looking into this idea of how these patterns are inherited and how people tend to think that the perception they're experiencing in any given moment is the truth, the fact, when in fact it's just one construct in one mind. Brings forward the question or the thought. So if I'm clear on the bottom line of this work, that bottom line is that at every moment we're each experiencing our own reality. Is that correct? You're saying that our realities are made up of internal information and not caused by outside events. What we've been trained to think of as an actual event in the world is really happening in our heads. And what happens in our heads is distorted by upsets and grievances we hold. Oh, big question mark for Richard. And he's looking for me for confirmation for what he just said. The world repeatedly triggers realities we hold. And then we wonder, why is this happening to me again? You know, it's interesting. People have this, why is this happening to me again experience, and they ask that question, and they think it's the external, see, that happened, and they did this, and they did this, and they did this, and that's the why is this happening to me again? How does life organize so many events to coincide with repeated? The why is this happening to me again experience is an internal experience based on unresolved perceptual content being repeated and replayed and massaged to look like a different event, but it's the same content, simply massaged to look a little different. So the world repeatedly triggers these realities, and that's the core of the why is this happening to me again experience. Recall now that projection and externalization result from blaming our inner happenings on others. When we blame, the tendency is to think the outside event is causing your experience, and it's not. Projection does not work to alleviate pain because when you pretend the problem is outside, you leave the pain inside and cut yourself off from being able to resolve it. The reason running away does not work to put an end to your pain is that you take your painful realities with you. Has moving ever done much to change the quality of your relationships? No, I guess avoidance is not the answer, Richard replies. We talked about the idea that anger does not work and is never justified. We also explored the stresses involved in holding anger in the body and the pain from the tensions of keeping falsehoods in place. We considered the possibility that as these patterns are passed on, they might contribute to what is now thought of as genetically inherited dis-ease. Richard asked the question, is it possible that family disease patterns can be changed, Michael? And my response is absolutely. And the main skill that needs to be developed is the ability to hold the space of conscious, active, present love while unresolved issues surface. That will shift any energy pattern. So the skill required to step into a deep healing mode is, of course, all of the above, but in particular at this point, to develop the ability to hold to that mind that is in you that the ancients called the mind of Christ. And there's nothing religious about that idea. There is a mind of love in you. We've been fooled into thinking that's got something to do with religion. My offering is nothing whatsoever to do with religion. Yeah, you go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, he doesn't say, I come to bring you religion, I come to bring you dogma, I come to bring you doctrine. He says, I come to bring you life. And what is human life? Human life is love flowing through a cell. If we replace what's flowing through the cell with some form of hostility or fear, our perceptions are going to be based in hostility or fear. We're going to be pained, and the pictures our mind is showing us, if we believe that they're of things outside of us, rather than massaged and generated to look like things outside of us, but are really the internal dynamics that we hold, if we never collapse into those internal dynamics, then all kinds of BS develops. Belief systems. The objective of this work is to collapse out of belief systems, to collapse all the fantasies of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Remember, the Sorcerer's Apprentice was going to experiment with things. Well, we're at the point where, because of the Sorcerer's Apprentice experimenting in the world of biology, there are more species disappearing from the planet every day. than in any time in history. Because the sorcerer's apprentice decided that there was big bucks in violating the energy systems of the earth is on the verge of collapse. It's time to take it back from the sorcerer's apprentice and to realize that oftentimes the sorcerer's apprentice has a predatory mindset. And under the guise of liberty, we allow the predatory mindset to continue. No, the predatory mindset in the human realm, I mean, if you're in a lion and tiger and, a giraffe situation, hey, survival of the fittest, that's the game. But we're not animals. We're beings. We're humans. We are the presence of love. And in a world that's based in that, predators are criminals and need to be held accountable for their predatory behavior. We need to move out of the sorcerer's apprentice and realize how this energy system is designed, how it works, and what our place is in it. And when we do, the energy field will open in ways that we can't even fathom, and the trauma and the hate and fear and the rage and the guilt and the abuse, the energetic patterns of those things will simply, literally, energetically pop out, just process out of the system. And 2,000 years ago, the man who said, had a singular purpose, I come to bring you life, I come to restore you to the truth of who you are, I come to take you out of the clutches of the sorcerer's apprentice. And the sorcerer's apprentice may be the businessman up there at the top of the corporate ladder, it may be the minister or the priest or the rabbi at the top of the church chain, it might be the government agent at the top of the government agency. I'm going to take you out of the clutches of the predator, and I'm going to support you being restored to life, enhancing the flow of love through your structure. And it is the active presence of that love that brings healing to anything that is unlike itself. I find many different ways of delivering this message, but that's the one that's on my mind today. And I'm honored and delighted that you're here to be part of engaging in the tools. It's not about developing a belief system about anything. It's about a set of cool tools that bring restoration, bring us back to the truth of who we are. So I'm honored and delighted that you're here to be part of the conversation, and I would love to have you enter the conversation with me. So if you're out there in listener land, and especially if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you on our control panel, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you dial that number, you'll be listening to the show. And then, once you're in that mode, if you push 1, pushing 1 will raise a hand in the control panel that Jeannie's in front of. She'll look at your number, introduce you by your area code, and we'll be having a conversation. So if you're out there in listener land, how can we support you? What's on your mind? Miss Jeannie, do we have anything happening in the chat room or anybody in the phone queue?
It is all quiet. So someone press 1. We have 30 minutes. We're just halfway there.
Yes, so let's have a conversation. Time for a dialogue. How can we support you? What's on your mind?
maybe direct people again to the monthly membership. Be coming up again. We did October the 9th, and now it'll be coming up the second Saturday of each month. So the next one is November 13th.
So if you're interested in being part of a community that's working together with the Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing tool on Zoom live, we're doing a monthly Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing workshop. And there's kind of a membership that we've set up for participating in that, and there are 3 levels of membership. You can do one single workshop, and or you can do a package of 3 of those monthly workshops in a given year, or you can do a full year. And there are several videos, one audio that goes along with the program. If you sign up at any level that you sign up, there's a video, Mind Shifters, an introduction to Still Point Breathing. There's an audio track from a radio show actually that we did last week on why Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing. And there's a video from a live intensive where we got into the Mind Shifters tool. So that'll be, working on the Mind Shifters aspect of things is something that everybody's going to do on their own. And then Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, and through to completion, it's projected, it depends on the size of the group. We had a smaller group this week, so we finished quite early. And then on Tuesday, we had a very lively discussion. Each week, there are 2 sessions. There's a Mind Shifter, there's a Still Point Breathing workshop on Saturday. Everybody's done their Mind Shifter in advance of that, using the 2 videos and the audio link to understand that process. And then on Wednesday is a process and question and answer session. So if you'd like to join us, the cost to do a single Mind Shifters and Still Point Breathing workshop is $150. And if you want to do a 3 package, that price drops to $375, so it's $125 a session. And then if you want to join us for the year program, it's $1,200, $100 a month for the year, or if you pay that year in advance, then it drops to $900 for 12 sessions. So if you're interested in joining us for that, you could drop Jeannie an email. If you've got my phone number, you could certainly call me and we'll get you set up. Or you can drop Jeannie an email, JEANIE @whyagain.org. Let her know you're interested. Include your phone number and I'll be in touch. We'll have a conversation, get you set up. And as always, if money is a challenge for engaging in anything that we do, we're always open to working with people to break that cost up in a way that makes it doable. So be welcome to participate. And if I were in your hometown and had just completed the presentation that I did, my conversation with Richard from the book, looking at perception and how perception is a construct of the mind, if I'd have just finished that presentation, in your local library or university or church or community center or prison, you were in the audience and I walked down off the stage, how many of you would be coming over with a, hey, Michael, what about a question? Of course, it would just be a quick question, because everybody's question is a quick question. Rarely are they really quick questions. But if I were walking down off the stage right now, and what would you walk over to me and say? And the purpose of this show is to create the space where you've got room to say that, to ask that question. And sometimes people feel like, well, my voice would be shaky on the radio, and so I'm not going to push one. Okay, so if your voice is shaky, can you make that okay? It's like, so what? Or I'm not sure my question is important enough, or I know enough about what I'm talking about. Well, every question is important, and sometimes some of the most basic questions are some of the most important ones that take us right back to the core principles of Why is this happening to me again? And the first century Aramaic forgiveness process. So if you're out there in listener land, we're ready for a question. Push 1. Let's have a conversation. How can we support you? And if we're just going to be in silence today in the dialogue part of the show, I actually have a 3-hour why workshop, Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop coming up that I'm doing for a conference this afternoon, and I have some prep work to do. So I'm going to just sign off the show and say thank you for joining us. Hope your day is blessed. Hope you have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world, and blessings.